This talk came about when I presented this at Manchester Meetup at our Developers Cultural group, where basically we're looking at how what's the next few years looking like for the SRE and how is it been evolved and the learning experience and all of that. So I'll be sharing my journey to you, and I'll try and make it very really interactive. So this is kind of things I'll cover: introduction, trying to demystify SRE, my journey told in retrospects, and some conclusions I was able to share or learn. So I think my main goal for this talk is that when I'm done, I've basically communicated how my journey and experience to becoming an SRE engineer was. It's good to caveat that everybody's journey is going to be different, and people come from different backgrounds. Um, and it's basically a journey told in retrospective. So I didn't really set out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, saying I want to become an SRE professional. I found myself there, but then interestingly, someone's like, I take the boxes that would get you there as well. So it's quite kind of like a very interesting thing to me. And this journey kind of like continues. I think I was just in like 3 talks today, and I was like, oh my god, I'm getting some ideas from the other speakers and the other talks and from the other practices. So it's like it's something like keeps on evolving. Yeah, first part is me trying to demystify SRE itself. Yeah, yeah, SRE, we all know this is like an acronym for like site reliability engineering. Um, Basically, it's about it's what you get when you ask a software engineer to design an operations team. So operations team typically would be your IT, ops team, some manual methods, some automated methods. But as soon as you get like a team of engineers there, they're looking at how can we reduce toil, how can we automate, how can we make this work on its own, like how can we make this more efficient, like yeah, how can you make it more efficient on its own. So a good way of looking at it is like SRE implements DevOps. And I think this line also came up because of the controversy of like, do we still have DevOps team today? Do you have DevOps team? Do you have platform team? Is DevOps a role? Is DevOps a culture? And I think more people are beginning to accept that DevOps is more of like a culture that you're imbibing in the company. And yeah, it's more of like a culture, or like a way of working in the company as well. So I think the for you to like understand this talk really well is basically me, an engineer that's spent most of my career in product engineering. I have a lot of interest for DevOps and cloud, doing it at the sides. Got into developer experience, building tools for developers, and then trying to like, okay, we're building a new team of SRE engineers. Like, what do we really mean by SRE in this team, and what does SRE mean in the general field like, and what context of problem do we have to like solve in our company? And what you find out is like every company has like different answers to it, even though there are like some shared goals. So that's kind of like why I wanted to like just document what I thought SRE was, so like trying to have some acceptable definition here. So for me, SRE is like interested in making sure an application in production continues to run reliably and efficiently, and it provides you tools to like monitor, diagnose, treat things when problems happen. And in making this definition, I think from an SRE engineer point of view, your application can be anything in a box. And you quickly see that I'm using terminologies that kind of like familiar with like cloud ops. So basically, when I say an application is just something that's running in a box, I don't really, I mean, I care about that box, but at the high level, it's just a container in a pod running, and we have like diagnostic things that you listen to like tell you how that box is running. So that means I don't have to have written that box to manage that box in a way, but it's just a series of boxes that are working together, communicating together. And interestingly, the team that built the application do not have to own the metrics or the other tools that run the application. even though they need to understand how to like use it. So it's quite a very interesting way of like taking a back step from someone that used to write the code and build the code and know all the single code and test to someone that just, okay, you give me this box, I'm going to run it for you. The site reliability role itself combines skills of development teams and operations team by requiring an overlap in responsibilities. So I feel like for you to like be able to like be efficient in this role, I'm a bit biased because I'm coming from product engineering, but I think it's very useful to like have the product development skills or understand how program languages work and the concerns there. And it also understands the concerns of operations team and then finding that balance between those two. So traditionally, operation teams are measured by how long the application is running, the number of incidents like downtime. Whereas nowadays we look at it from like, yes, you can have an incident, but what's the blast radius? Like if everything is not going down, like incidents, we've had set incidents as a way of working, and as long as the blast radius is not bringing everything down, or we have like different levels or categories for like incidents, so that we've set incidents as a way of working and finding out ways to like fix incidents quickly. So so just having that operations balance. Okay, you need the application to run. You have to provide ways to like quickly roll back versus trying to fix every single thing immediately. And I also have it from the engineering point of view to understand what kind of confidence can you get from automated testing to like continue releasing. So I think you need those skills from both product engineering and like things that you typically do in your platform or DevOps daily. So I decided to divide my journey to SRE into like two parts. And the first part I called software engineering to DevX. And the second part I talked about like switching to SRE, what kind of things actually changed in my day-to-day and how I started to think. Again, this is a journey told in retrospective in the sense that I didn't really plan to be an SRE engineer. I've been in it for like a year plus now. Before then, like DevX, but then before then, just like product engineering, leading teams, really keen on like agile ways of delivery. So like pushing the limits in terms of like automated, releasing often, all those like really good practices and DevOps. So yeah, I was like open to that. But the aim wasn't to become an SRE engineer. So it's good to like look at this journey in retrospective. And I presented this to like people that are also like either new in the field or like curious about what SRE is as well, or interested in getting into the field. Because I think it's still fairly growing field. So life as a software engineer started quite a while. I tended to like think, I was a multidisciplinary engineer. So what I meant by this was like, back then you wear all the hats. Like there's no like differentiation. Like you're basically the full stack engineer. Full stack could be full stack plus ops, or just full stack or backend engineer. Basically, you're doing everything, and you're familiar with different concepts, which basically have like different concerns. So you're doing full stack engineering, you're thinking about rendering, do you use the render server side, just render server side or client side. What about your state? Do you do states in back-end or front-end states, and how these states affect the performance of your application? I thought referencing this would be nice, because these are skills that this is experience that is relevant when you start working as an SRE engineer. So basically, when you're trying to like find out why a Facebook button that wasn't rendered is bringing out the whole site, this is our true examples. And you can basically bring experience of, oh, we've done this before, like tech changes, like maybe you didn't use cool React hooks back then, but basically, if you look at the concept, it's like kind of like you've used similar things that are related. So backend engineering, I've done a bit of mobile engineering as well. Actually a lot, like Android, BlackBerry, JTME days. So these are things that and if you look at these three things, for example, in mobile engineering, you're thinking about You're thinking about you're looking at different constraints in terms of like memory size. You're looking at data connections, how the data pass each other, and yeah, SRE guy is not the architect, but you do have experience in architecture, and you can see when I don't use the word stupid things are done and it's affecting, and it actually requires like a rewrite or like a change in way the operation, where you calculate things, because it's always going to be like a bottleneck as well as going to lead to downtime. Also like desktop application as well. I don't think everyone should really take these boxes, but I feel like the experience in taking these boxes is good, because the common thing here is like each of these platforms have like different concerns and different strengths, and they affect the way you think about your application running in production and how you interact with the other parts of the business as well. Yes, I just listed that, and also I think another part that is really interesting is I feel like it's really in my journey to SRE, but really powerful is being able to understand different languages, but more importantly, different paradigms. So being comfortable with like OOP languages, static languages. My current company at the moment, I work at Depop. I joined Depop because I wanted to like work in a company whereby I'll be focusing on different things than the actual language. So Depop uses a lot of like Scala for their backend. Like 80% of our backend says has Scala. I won't call myself I don't think I'm a Scala expert or even like a strong Scala engineer, but I've used like other functional languages in the past, and this then helps me to like understand the language the developer speaks in and help with like solving things or even building libraries. So like, as an SRE engineer, you're involved in, depending on the company, like we have like a standardization project, for example, and in doing standardization, we're basically just trying to make sure that every application, for example, log metrics the same way, because if they don't log metrics the same way, it's hard for you to like navigate through several applications, because remember they're just black boxes, and you want some unique things about them to be able to like treat them the same sort of thing, and it just basically makes maintenance easier to manage. So even having that the multiple languages thing helps. I think my introduction to Scala was more of like Gatling performance testing, and yeah, so that gives you the ability to like make changes to those things and help, or even like have sensible discussions around that. Also, I think on our program language as well, I want to call out like dynamic languages. My favorite language is like Python. So yeah, sure. And I think just even having a Python or a Python equivalent in your skill set is really good in terms of like writing glowing tools, especially if you're writing developer experience tools or trying to like scripting. I think in my role I tend to like do quite few scriptings as well. Like you're trying to like write some OTUs or whatever, and yeah, your go-to language. We have services in like Golang. So having this, like, if you come from a SRE background, you can't just where the operations are. It's good. Having that programming background is actually quite useful, because even though you're not a product team, you have a set of tools or services that you have to like maintain, and this makes you more comfortable in that area. Then also, as a software engineer already, knowing your databases, basically knowing the different strengths, your databases, your choices in that area, the different cost benefits of each one. Also knowing about your host networking, especially in terms of like cloud, which is good to know it traditionally, and then also know in terms of like cloud, your VPC, your subnets, AZ, like what does this mean? Because these are things that you learn. You get to learn as a developer or as an SRE engineer, but the point is that it's useful, very, very useful in like thinking about the problems and how you solve them, and also having like how you make them secure as well. Pipelines is really, really important. I went the SRE hard, but I work a lot with like we own the Jenkins pipeline in my company. So basically, we want to like restarting, cleaning up, and make sure it's up to date. Doing a bit of Jenkins ops, which is like really difficult, but I think it's really a lot mature. I think my current company is one of the places I've seen they done really well in terms of like doing Jenkins as infrastructure as a code, not Jenkins X, Jenkins itself. Yeah, so I found that really interesting. And even having experience with different building tools, because when you have experience with different building tools, you can ask different questions about how, because your focus is not really on the pipeline, it's about how do you do efficiency, like developer efficiency, and how do you make them continue to release things, yeah, and how do you even share? Because like I think SRE is more about scaling as well. You have so many services, so many pipelines in the business. How do you manage all of that? Basically, how do you manage all of that entropy? And this is where you tap into like Jenkins library. You tap into like writing some Groovy scripts, back to like having skills in like multiple languages, and this kind of like helps you, yeah, and knowing about auxiliary tools as well. And lastly, embracing cloud. Yeah, I think even before even thinking about SRE or even like DevX, I think like 4 years ago, I started to like, okay, I want to like get some formal, cautious experience in like cloud ops. And I think back then, one of the ways for me to like get into it was like doing a nano degree with yeah, doing a nano degree with I've forgotten the company name now. I think they're the only one that offers like nano degree anyway, in cloud ops. And yes, it was kind of like a way to like confirm the knowledge I had, and then also like get some experience there. I'm not saying everybody should do this, but this is like my own path to prepare me to SRE, even though I wasn't planning to go to SRE. But I feel like other people will have gotten this experience in different other ways as well. Yeah. Some key skills I picked up then, which I feel like I was talking about, is having the actual, like this, it's good to have experience building systems, scripts, whatever, like you need to have the actual experience to help developers like run them and to be able to like understand the behavior of like systems. Understanding the different application runtimes and the common pitfalls in like different languages or different kind of applications, like web applications now. If you're running like a Node.js application, you know that's like event modeling, or you try to say event loop system, whereby you have to like not block the event thread and stuff like that. And there's some certain things that will happen. I say, oh, this is where the problem is. I know this. Or some really simple classic ones, but you'll be surprised that it's not obvious to everyone. It's like database and database tuning, and having like indexes in your your DBs and stuff like that. They come up in. So basically, how I think as an SRE engineer, you don't care about the low-level details until they become a problem, and then you have to then wear that hat. So I'm not trying to become a Scala engineer expert or even like a current React expert or whatever. But when there's an issue, incident-wise, and you're doing the post-mortem, how it becomes a problem. I guess because my team is like also like a team of like staff engineers as well. We are also like willing to like give deep diving into the levels and find out what's going on. And these skills is what makes that work like easy. Yeah. And also understanding like development lifecycle, and because this, I think understanding development lifecycle allows you to like be able to like also like speak the same language as the development teams. So like development teams are like one of your customers or like your main customers. Understanding the way software is built, like development cycle, like planning, product wise, understanding what they really want, like dev, testing. I know it sounds like simple now based on like experience, but it's really important to understand those key areas, because you can ask certain questions, like even in terms of like testing, automated testing, environments, what kind of performance, what kind of like how we're measuring this application itself. I think it's like really important in speaking the same language as your developers. And also, like, yeah, I covered automated testing as well. Collect SRE can, I think, as part of being SRE team, like we're kind of like one of the members in the engineering leadership in terms of like how do we do things guilds wise, advice wise. Even though we don't do the day-to-day system, we help to like set standards in that area. What's the minimum thing that your application should have done before you even, like what is the minimum testing, even like should I say security scanning, Docker scanning, stuff like that. Like your application will have gone through before they even are even ready to like be deployed. Like what's the minimum like standards that we want to put in there? Um, how do we build faster? Because when you build faster, you can roll back faster or you can realize faster. It's kind of interesting that we're not the product team, but we're also involved in a lot of like the way they build the software because we want to ensure the same quality and same standard across boards. So any things like where do you get your Docker images from, your Docker based images from? What is the minimum version that you share? How do you fix security vulnerabilities, or how do you make sure the developer teams fix security vulnerabilities? In fact, how do you make sure that they know that they have security vulnerabilities? And this is where you come into like internal developer experience tools that can surface that information that you have. But you need to understand that flow in dev cycle to like be able to like have those conversations, or even be listening to them. Yeah, I think also being product and user focused, I feel like this is like a good skill to have, because then you can separate between metrics about your application performance, and then metrics about like the business performance about your application. We had something called like a fairy chart where you could see if the sales were dropping, and that would like indicate like, oh, is there like an incident? If there's a slight, or if there's an incident, which areas are affected in the business. Just being able to like not be so. I feel like in our world, you need that balance, because you can be so drawn into like interesting techie net details that might not necessarily matter to like the application performance. Like in that, like first of all, I think once your lights are on, you can then do some improvements. But you should always like remember that yes, at the end of the day, the product and application is there for like the business and users. This is just talking about DevOps culture itself. Like how do you build? What kind of tools and processes do you have to like improve the way you build applications, the way you release applications, and do you have ownership and catalog of ownership? Because when there's an incident, from the previous two talks earlier on, you need to like notify the owners. And in company, this is like a very, very, I feel like I can do a whole talk about service ownership, because it's like it can be a difficult problem to fix, and especially in a world where everything is like so fluid, where you have teams today and the business changes the strategy every single maybe quarter, and you have team splits, or you have some applications developed by some certain teams that contractors that leave, and then like it's just all over the place, and at the end of the day, you don't know who is the true owner of the system, who can you make changes to. So I think having that ownership bit like really done is like important, and all of this here is also targeted towards they're not just made up, because they're targeted towards solving the toy problem. Like if your team is spending so much time fixing Jenkins pipelines, oh, this is failing, this is fragile, your test is fragile, like I think if you've worked in a very messy place, you appreciate a place whereby there's some order, and one of the people that is tasked with that order is like SRE engineers, like reducing the toil, basically. And this is like where you take advantage of automation things, IAC, standardization. I feel like I think, for example, now Jenkins, a typical application in my company is generated from like some scaffolding, from a nice UI. I want a Scala application. It's just going to provision everything for you. Okay. So I think I've just talked a lot about my pre-journey, the different background skills that is useful. And now I'm going to talk about wearing the SRE hat itself. I was technically developer experience. And how I found out myself to SRE is kind of like a anticlimax, basically. Basically, the DevX team was merged with the SRE team. Basically, so we basically had a small DevX team and small SRE team, and we're like, okay, how can we combine these things to like have like one productive team that can actually deliver? We had like a platform engineering team that was basically based on interested in the platform, and I like to think from agile point of view. But you have a new team, you can decide your own mission, which areas you want to solve, and you came back to what does SRE mean to me and my company. Did some research and reading. I spoke to like some of my colleagues in the area outside the company, who had experience in SRE, how do they work and all of that. Peers, I'm rushing through the rest of the slides. I'm sorry about that. But basically, I came to like some general baseline that says, okay, this is what we want to do as SRE in the company. It's like every company has like different pain points, and you can decide to address. You can't address everything at the same time. You can decide to choose what you want to address year on year or quarter on quarter, and just having that cautious thinking about it, because you don't want to be just another DevOps team or just another platform team or just another DevX team. You want to like basically decide how you want to like play the SRE role in your company. And for me, I just prefer to look at it from the runtime. Application is running. How can I keep it running and reliable? And any other problem that comes from there, how can I make that process smoother? And I think that was the way I ended up with these goals. Define a clear incident management process. Interestingly, the opening talk today was about incident management process, and even though I thought ours has a lot of bells and whistles, I think that had more bells and whistles than, like, especially with the AI part. That's really interesting. And that last point basically talks about the whole rambling I've been doing through the talk. Basically, as an SRE engineer, there's going to be cross-cutting concerns, standardization processes that involve several teams and all of that, and being able to like talk to them, work with them, even be able to like you're basically interacting with these different parts, platform, like wearing these different hats. It's like it's going to be very, very important. Yeah, and basically also like, yeah, you have to do some vendor things sometimes. I don't do a lot of that, but it's like, how do you maximize? Like for us, we pay a lot of money for Datadog. I think that's a common theme in the industry at the moment. But how we actually using it and maximizing it as the SRE team and even across the company? Are we getting the best out of that tool? And how do we get it done? I think finally also seeing yourself as an engineer, and how do you contribute back to the engineering community in the company and outside, and helping to like make sure that things are done the right way. Because when they don't go well, it comes back to your desk. It's like the doctor, right? Like it comes back to you when the patient falls sick or the application falls sick. I thought this was, I think this is still early days. Even though I feel like more confident now. I created this slide like 6 months ago. I've learned a lot since then. I've learned more today, but basically this presentation was targeted towards people that are curious about what the hell is SRE, or people that are just starting the journey. And because it's quite new, it's like, oh, I'm an SRE engineer. I just don't have the title without doing the work. And how do you want to define it within your own context? And then also giving that confidence that, hello, you already have those skills that is required for an SRE engineer. You just need to apply it. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
If you were going to do it again, would you do it again?
The answer is like yes. Which kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like, it's still hot to me because like just even being in a room, I think coming to this SREday today was really good for me because I know a lot of engineers, I know a lot of Java programmers, I know a lot of Scala programmers, I know a lot of Golang programmers, but SRE as a profession is still quite like new to me, and just having a lot of people like thinking about that problem is quite new. Like this is the first time, or maybe it's one of the first time I've seen people talk about incident management, and it sounds really exciting. That was like really exciting, and from an engineer background, that can be really motivating as well. That I can actually make this exciting to my own engineers as well.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So in your role as a SRE, where do you sort of draw the line in terms of development? How much development you got to get involved with, or are there sort of any handoff points where you say, this is as much deep I would go, but then this is a handoff point which I won't go beyond?
So I think it starts from like like quarterly. So we do this OKR objective stuff. So we don't usually set objectives that will say we're going to build in a new service. Like so, business in terms of like product is never our customers. But when there's an issue in their system, in terms of like helping our senior engineers in the company, we then get involved or like solving problems. 2 days ago, I made a pull request to add in an endpoint to a service. We call it catalog service. But I wanted that endpoint to be able to return me all the list of deployments and the latest by time or something like that. List of all my services and when they were deployed. Now that service is a service, but it's not a product service. It's a service that serves us. So it's like our own cataloging service that we use to like manage all our services. So I'll write those code and I won't set any limit to that. I'll write it like as long as I can. I think I'm also like a very strong, should I say, backstage Spotify engineer, which is quite interesting. So backstage is a tool which is for internal development. It's a lot of React and TypeScript, and I spend a good percentage of my time working on that. So I won't put a caps to how long you spend developing that because my customers for that tool is the developers. So I don't know if that answers your question. So you shouldn't be developing tools for products. You should be developing tools for engineers or to improve your process. Writing Datadog agents, scrapers, like stuff like that should be okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. That was inspiring to me. I have a question, right? So, I've had a situation where I'm part of a Scrum team, and the developers they meet the definition of done. So everything is unit tested, QA, and all that good stuff. But guess what happened? We now have SRE that comes back and say, hey, things are not working the way it should be expected. And it caused a lot of friction between the QA guy, who is part of the Scrum team, and the SRE. I'm not sure how you could handle such situation so that it doesn't cause conflict, because it sounded like the SRE guy became the police of the team. Coming to the daily scrum and say, hey, this is wrong. It's not supposed to be like this. So,
I think this dynamic, I've seen this dynamic happen before. And basically it requires sometimes the engineering leadership team to like set the priorities. And I'm talking about more of like tech debt in terms of like library updates and security fixes. For the product team, yes, the service is working till it's not working. For the SRE engineer, it's like, well, you're using a very old version of this. It's not supported. How do you change that? And you have tools that make this easy, like things like SourceGraph, where you can make changes like 300 repos at the same time. But even getting the product team to merge it and release it can be difficult. And that's where the politics and I think you need someone in leadership to like set the priorities and call what is important or set the standard, basically. It's not a tech problem, basically. Thanks, everyone.